the year, the conversation of upsizing, downsizing, moving around the Lower Mainland happens very, very often. And these conversations are very specific to individuals' situations, whether you're buying first, selling first, and there are pros and cons and risks on both sides. This also comes with the conversation of evaluating your home for sale. What is it worth? Especially if you are looking to purchase first, you want a pretty accurate number on what we think your home is going to sell for, at least budgeting conservatively. So we're going to kind of address these two things in this podcast, but where should we start? Should we talk about buying and selling conversation or evaluating your home?
Well, let's talk about evaluating your home because that's typically what comes first in those conversations for us. We sort of let people know what we think their home is worth today. And then from there, we sort of build the system that we're going to use with them if they're going to sell first or buy first. So when we evaluate a home, you know what? I honestly don't know how other people do it. I don't know how other realtors do it. Sometimes I see values that are insane, really, really high, or really low.
I'll tell you how other realtors do it. Yeah.
Really high or really low. For us, it's a really, really careful evaluation. Denny and I are very, very hesitant to just throw out numbers in appointments with people. I don't want to say something too high or too low. I want to say the right number. I don't want the seller to bring up a sale that was nearby that I don't know about. I don't want them to bring up a sale nearby that was from 3 years ago that I don't know about. So it's a really, really big thing for us to throw out numbers of how much we think somebody's home is worth. The beginning of the process is just our day-to-day experience. Our day-to-day experience in the neighborhood gives us an idea of what a certain type of property might sell for. Let's talk about, for home evaluation, let's talk about maybe detached first.
Yeah, I mean, let's spend the majority of this conversation on detached because it's a more complex, time-consuming evaluation. If you're selling a one-bedroom condo, not that it is easy to pick a list price. There's definitely a range that we're going to discuss with you based on recent sales and where we think market conditions are going. There's variables involved with condos like view and outlook and
floor and everything,
lots. But condos are pretty easy based on, especially if you're in a tower that has 40 stories and you have a one bedroom and there's a one bedroom that sold 2 months ago that is basically the same layout as yours, same square footage, same finishings because it's a 6-year-old building. Those are pretty easy to pick a range of list price. And then it just comes down to strategy of your listing, whether you're buying first or selling first, what type of experience you want on the market, what's going to get us the best result based on what else is available in the neighborhood. All these different types of things. But let's spend more time on single family because they are more unique and complex valuations.
Yeah, definitely. We see homes on different sides of the street consistently sell for more or less depending on the side of the street that you're on. You could be facing a green belt, you could have a view, you could have your yard, south facing, but it's backing onto a busy street. So there's a lot of things that go into evaluating detached home. Of course, it's lot size, but it's also lot shape. It's also, how close to the end of the street you are, how close to the cul-de-sac you are. Are you in the cul-de-sac? Is there somebody behind you looking down into your yard? Are you looking into somebody else's? There's a lot of things that people care about when they're buying a detached home. Most people who are purchasing a detached home are experienced home buyers. They have bought and sold other properties. They know exactly what they want in a property and they know what they're willing to pay for. In areas, let's talk about older areas. New West, for example, there's not a lot of new detached homes in New West. So they're all very, very unique. They, could be older and renovated. They could be, added on. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at older homes in New West versus homes in neighborhoods like I live in, Heritage Mountain in Port Moody. All the homes were built by Park Lane at the exact same time-ish, and they have very similar floor plans. Some of them have, renovations or not. So in areas like Heritage Mountain, we are really looking at where you're located exactly, what you're looking at, how far from the schools it is in terms of walking distance for the kids. So there's a lot of little things that we don't have to consider when we're looking at condos.
on a very basic level, let's say to begin a home evaluation, we're looking at lot size, looking at age of home, we're looking at size of home and updates. From there, it gets more confusing.
Yeah.
From there, there are so many different variables, but let's say like I had a home evaluation. Well, I'm meeting them on Friday, but I probably spent 6 hours in the last couple of days going through sales, comparing, contrasting, like really minor details to try to come up with a pretty accurate range. And these things only happen because we've seen so many homes. There are algorithms out there. There are what's called CMA programs, comparative market analysis programs, that essentially is like a BC assessment. And when you say, how do other realtors evaluate homes? I think it depends a lot on your experience. If you haven't seen 1,000 single family homes and you have a home evaluation, you've only walked through 15 of them in the last year, you're probably using one of these programs that is using comparables from the neighborhood to spit out a number. How accurate is that number? How accurate is the BC assessment? That's my response.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's so many different variables. Typically, when we're starting an older home valuation, we're looking at what is the land value here? And where do you find land value? You're looking at land value type sales. You're looking at 1930s, 40s, 50s homes that have had zero updates that have sold in the last 12 months in that neighborhood. Depending on market conditions, you might be going back 2, 3, 5 years. For this one coming up on Friday, it's a unique property. And there hasn't been a lot of sales in that neighborhood. So I'm going back to like 2015, 2016 to look at sales to try to piece together information to come up with what I think a buyer is willing to pay for this today. So once you have land value, which is kind of where you start with an older home, even a new home, where you start is land value. And then you go to renovations, layout, anything that makes this home unique that potentially adds value. Have they, built a garage, or have they put in a suite? Have they done an addition? Have they added a floor? Like, these are complex renovations now, but have they added a floor? And then you kind of work backwards on what is the cost of that renovation. So maybe some examples of like new home construction, for example. In an area like nuanced, we have a new home coming up, brand new, that'll be finished in May. Evaluating and picking a list price or suggesting a list price to the developer is a bit complex and challenging because there are not a dozen recent new home sales that have sold in the last 6 months. There's one. And so, yes, we're looking a little bit at that and like what finishes and comparability of like the quality of construction, but we're looking a lot at land value. What is the cost to build a home like this? And what is the replacement cost? And then kind of working our way backwards almost. So I guess the point of this conversation is to just outline evaluating a home is a learned skill. It's not an algorithm. The algorithms are not accurate.
It's not BC assessment.
It's definitely not BC assessment. No. Just ignore it completely. Yeah. Don't even bring it up.
No.
It's not a number that is worthwhile. I mean, there's just so many examples of seeing homes that have had massive renos that are like $500,000 or $600,000 renos, and the house value on BC assessment is like $82,000. So people are not walking through your home and evaluating them individually. And evaluating homes is a very, very individual process based on so many different factors. And even really small ones, like Monica said, on exact location on the exact street and the side of the street. Like all these things BC assessment is not obviously taking into consideration.
No. And then to be fair with detached, there's neighborhoods like areas of Queensboro, for example, where all the homes are about the same size, have very similar size lots. And we get a lot of homeowners, I would say Queensboro, and there's a few other neighborhoods where we meet with homeowners, and sometimes they think, well, mine, according to BC assessment, is 50 square feet bigger than theirs. So what's that, like $150,000 more in value? We painted ours. So like we painted the exterior, that cost us $10,000, which obviously gives us another $50,000 worth of value. So there's these conversations that are kind of complicated sometimes with sellers to explain to them what they've done to the home, if it is valuable or not. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And a good example would be, if a home just sold and there was only just one of those homes or two of those homes on the market, and it's sold and it's exactly like yours, except for yours is about 50 square feet bigger, but it's done by the same developer at the same time. You have the same lot, but you painted the exterior, say last summer. Is your home worth more than that other home? And the answer sometimes is no, because the other home that was purchased a few weeks ago when it was the only home on the market. If your home is the next only home on the market, it might be worth the same as that home, even though you have some improvements. So it's important to get really clear advice from your realtor in terms of value, because sometimes people start to make plans thinking, okay, my neighbor, I know that they sold for 1.35. I have spent about $30,000 or $40,000 on some updates over the years in my home. So my home must be worth $100,000 more. Sometimes people kind of slap these improvement values on things. It's really important to understand which improvements really do push your values forward, and other ones that is just good home maintenance that just really doesn't affect the value. And I think that those things are really important in our conversations too.
Sometimes consumers bring up like price per square foot. Yeah. And it's something we will look at to kind of steer us in a range when we're starting with a really unique home that maybe has a $500,000 range that it could be. Yeah. We're looking at price per square foot of neighborhood comparables to kind of steer us in a direction, but it is never the final deciding factor because homes are so unique, right? So an example, a 2,500 square foot home in a neighborhood might have a much better floor plan than a 3,000 square foot home. Yeah. Is the 3,000 square foot home worth more? Potentially it's worth less. Same thing with lot size. Lot size is an interesting one that a lot of people talk about. Well, my lot's 10,000 square feet. That one over there sold, that was 8,000 square feet. So mine has to be worth more than that. Lot size is an interesting one that it's based more on the functionality of the lot and the future potential of the lot. If you can't get more density out, let's say in older homes, if you can't get more density out of having a bigger lot, it may not be worth that much more. If you have a strangely sized or a strangely shaped lot, it might not be worth more. If your big lot is backing onto another home and the smaller lot is backing onto trees and green space, it's probably not worth more. So there's a lot of other factors outside of price per square foot that mean more when when a buyer is actually walking through the home, like layout, like lot location, like usability of the lot, than just price per square foot.
Right. And that's why it takes, realtors that are inside these homes a lot, that see a lot of homes, that walk a lot of lots. Right away when I'm looking at a detached home with a buyer, for example, I'm pointing out to them if there's retaining walls, if the retaining walls look like they need maintenance, what the drainage on the outside of the home looks like, where the home is situated on the lot, if it's where water might flow towards it or water's flowing away from it. There's a lot of things to consider when you're putting value onto your home, and from a buyer's perspective when they're thinking about purchasing your home. What types of negatives and positives might their realtor point out to them? So all of these things kind of get blended. And yes, price per square foot I don't want to discount that as a tool that we don't use at all. It's just a tool that's very, very blended with a lot of other tools that we use to evaluate a home. So once we evaluate your home.
I think people watch $1 Million Listing and they see those dudes talk about price per square foot like it is like religion.
Like it's the law, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it doesn't work like that.
I think to be honest, I think, and I like everyone's new at some point, but I think a lot of insecure or new realtors use price per square foot because it's something that they can see and they can write down and they can show their prospective clients that like, okay, this home's sold for this much per square foot and your home is 500 square foot bigger. So I'm going to say yours is this much. And the lot is worth this much price per square foot on this home. So price per square foot, your lot's worth this. And I think it's a tool that is used often. And I think, like I said, it's useful if you're blending it with a lot of other facts and knowledge, but it's not something that should be used as a black and white. If I can't use it to argue value with a buyer's agent, then I'm not using that to price your home.
Like Monica said, it's not a bad tool. It's not bad that maybe a newer realtor is using it a little bit more closely than someone who has seen a lot more homes. But like it's just something that holds a little bit of weight, but it's not the deciding factor in the majority of residential
unless you have a brand new condo in a 40-story building where they were selling them price per square foot, and somebody that has an identical unit that's like 1 or 2 floors below or above you, that's really the only time that price per square foot can be used with confidence, I would say.
Even in those scenarios, though, if you're looking at different sized units, the price per square foot will be so different. Like a 500 square foot 1-bedroom in a brand new building versus a 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom, their price per square foot might be $250 different.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. Price per square foot comparing a home that has one more bedroom than another one, for me, adds absolutely no weight whatsoever, because a different buyer is buying that home than is buying a 1-bedroom. Yeah.
But my BC assessment said it was.
Doesn't matter. Your BC assessment's wrong.
Okay, we figured out how to evaluate homes.
Yep.
Now, Monica, let's take the conversation to
the juggle.
What do I do first?
Yeah.
Do I buy first? Do I sell first? What am I supposed to do? How do I do this? Do I write a subject to sale offer?
Well, the answer is it depends. It depends. If you're writing a subject to sell offer, what are you offering on? So a lot of times, like, this whole formula of what to do starts with what that person or that buyer seller wants to purchase. If you're trying to purchase a townhome in Port Moody and you're selling a condo in Pitt Meadows, like, we're going to sell your condo first. Depending on the market, we're going to try to sell your condo first. You're not going to be able to get into a townhome with a subject to sale on a condo in Port Moody or in Pitt Meadows. Like, it's a very case by case, it depends sort of formula, which is why all of this information, like the home evaluations, are so important. If you're selling a detached home and you're downsizing, for example, but you're downsizing into a product that's very desirable, that's selling quite quick, we might need to consider getting fully ready, even listing and then going out to find the property that you want. But then you get into a situation where the biggest thing that people are afraid of is selling their home and having no place to live. And what do you tell your clients when they're like, "Oh, I'm going to sell my home and be homeless"?
Well, the first thing we always talk about is, what is the availability and desirability of your home and where you're trying to go? Yeah. If where you're trying to go is a really unique, let's say, heritage home in Queen's Park that comes up once a year, we don't know if that's going to come up in 3 months from now, 6 months from now. And when it does, those homes are very desirable, and the likelihood that you're competing is going to be high, and you may not win it. You may not get it. So this equation is always a very, very specific conversation, and a pretty in-depth conversation based on what you're selling and where you're trying to go. And there's risks on both sides. If you sell first and what you're looking for doesn't come up, or you lose out on a couple because that market segment is very active and competitive, then what? Are you renting? Well, rentals are really hard to find. Yeah. Are you short-term renting? Those aren't going to exist soon.
Yeah. Are you short-term renting with a family and things like that, right? It's a big equation. Mm-hmm. We talk to people all the time. One client that I'm working with has to sell a place in North Vancouver, and they want to move to Port Moody. They need a larger place. Since they bought their home, they went from being a couple to having a child to maybe wanting to have another one, and they're trying to get into Port Moody, into a family home, like whether it's a condo or a townhouse. They want to get into something bigger in Port Moody. So the conversation is completely different. We're talking about a very competitive market and trying to get the most out of their investment. So they wanted to err on the side of, like, having no doubts in their mind that they got the biggest number that they possibly could because of the move that they're trying to make. So we started off with a little bit of a higher price point, and a lot of people want to do that. I would say almost close to half of our sellers want to do that, right? They have this curiosity, and we have to satisfy the curiosity of trying a higher price point. And you know what? That's okay. The conversation we're having with them is, okay, we're going to try this higher price point for a few weeks. If it doesn't work, then we're marking it down. And oftentimes, this is really hard for people to understand, but it's very, very true. Oftentimes, we end in the same spot that we would have had we tried the lower price to begin with. You try a lower price, there's in certain markets, there's a high likelihood you'll get a lot of interest. Maybe multiple people might be interested in it. which will drive the price point to kind of where you want to be, versus trying a higher price point and people negotiating off of asking price, which is something that we see almost always when our clients want to try a higher price point. Occasionally, it might be just a unique enough property that people are willing to pay more than what we expect for them to pay for a home. But even those homes, we know that those are the unique homes. We know that they're the ones that, this might be the one that everyone's been waiting for. So, it takes experience to be able to identify those properties though.
That's the 6-hour evaluation right there.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. If you are buying first, typically the conversation goes a little bit more to the conservative side of market value on your sale. If you're purchasing first and you have 60 to 90 days to sell your current home, you're probably electing to list a little bit on the competitive side, especially in markets like this where a lot of product is quite active. Listing conservatively does not mean you are taking a lower sale price. It just means you have a better chance at selling quickly and demanding or asking for the date that lines up perfectly with your purchase. I would say right now in this type of market, like in 2021, like in 2017, the majority of people, due to one, the lack of supply and how competitive buying something is, but also how desirable your home is likely going to be when it comes up for sale. Most people are electing to purchase first and then list their home for sale right away. There's risks involved in this, obviously. There are behind the scenes conversations with mortgage brokers to ensure that if the timeline does not work perfectly, is bridge financing available? What other options do you have? Just so you kind of understand the entire scope of this buy and sell. But yeah, it's quite specific to each individual what you're buying and selling. So these are pretty in-depth conversations that we're just kind of overviewing here, but often these conversations are an hour plus with people and happen multiple times just to kind of make sure everyone is as informed as possible and making the right decision for them.
Yeah, I do want to talk really quickly about subject to sale, because that's something that comes up really often in these conversations is, oh, my mom said I can just like offer subject to sale and then try to sell my place. And that is that's not a system that's always going to work. So if it depends on the type of property that you're going to get into, as always. Purchasing a property subject to sale, if the seller accepts your subject to sale, you usually lose negotiation power in terms of price. And this is in one-on-one negotiations. If you're getting a property subject to sale, it's most likely something that's already been exposed to the market for a few weeks, if not a few months, so that the seller is willing to accept a subject to sale offer and willing to gamble on the fact that you need to sell your home in order for their home to sell. So you need a specific seller, a seller that doesn't already have their sights set on something. So a subject to sale, whereas we do see them maybe a few times throughout the year, it's not something that's very common in Greater Vancouver. It's complicated to inform sellers and to get them to accept a subject to sale property. And an important part of the scope, like Denny was talking about, is you do end up paying a little bit more to get a subject to sale accepted, because the seller isn't going to let you get a discount and then also give you the benefit of being able to sell your property first. So you usually end up with a little bit more skin in the game in order to get your subject to sale accepted. Some people are okay with that. They want the security. They don't mind spending a little bit extra to get the subject to sale. They want the time to sell their own home. In my experience, if you sharpen the pencil a little bit on your own sale price, get your property sold, you have a lot more negotiation power, and you end up saving or at least breaking even on the exchange. So it's really important to understand, the how much you sell for how much you buy. There's a number there, right? There's a number in between there, and that number can pretty much stay the same. So if you sell, let's say, for a condo for $599, you sell it quickly, so you're a cash buyer to purchase a townhome. And you get that townhome maybe at a little bit of discount. It's been sitting there for a few weeks, or maybe you pay asking for it. That's fine. But you're getting the townhome that you want, and that spread there, that number, it makes sense for you. But if you're getting a subject to sale, you're getting probably an older townhouse that's not as desirable, that's been sitting there a little while. That's why no one else wants it. It's been sitting there for a little while. So you're getting something that maybe needs a little bit more work. It's going to cost you a little bit more. But then you have the freedom to go ahead and try to sell your home for your dream price that you want for that home which in my experience, it's going to sell for market value anyway. So you usually end up losing a little bit. You end up losing a little bit, whether that's losing in terms of location or losing in terms of, a little bit older of a product that needs an update. You end up losing a little bit when you try to offer subject to sale.
This conversation is super market condition specific. Like in 2023, I think I did 2 subject to sales. And this is a slower year where the assurance of your condo or townhouse, whatever you're selling in a week is a lot more unpredictable versus busier markets like 2021, like 2017. You could almost guarantee that you're going to list slightly competitively. You're going to get multiple offers. You're going to tell the buyer what date you want. You're going to sell well over list price, and it's going to be a very smooth ride. So the subject to sale in those environments is rarely used or even seen versus in slower years like 2023, like 2019. It's a lot more common when the predictability of your sale is unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? How many subject to sales we're going to see in 2024?
See or accept?
Accept.
I would say the over-under is 1.5.
Yeah.
For our team.
I was thinking like 1-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we'll see.
2024 is starting off busy and we're excited. We have these conversations every day. If you are thinking about a move, if you have mortgage questions because your mortgage is coming up for renewal, reach out to us. It's funny that consumers always say that I don't want to waste your time, but like these are the conversations where we feel like we're really educating consumers and really helping them, especially early in the process. If you're 6 to 12 months away from making a move, reach out to us. We want to kind of guide you through this process so that it is less stressful and more fun.
Yeah. If you have a realtor evaluate your home and they tell you what your 20-year-old home is worth, price per square foot, that's a flag. Give us a call.